will be joining us hopefully shortly. We want to get started for the sake of saving time, and I'll be starting with the perspective from Palestine. So, Omar, I'm going to go straight to you. Of course, we've had very, very eventful a year and a half, 2 years almost. Many things have changed on the ground. Many developments happened on Palestine, especially in Gaza, but also the West Bank. There's an ongoing occupation, expanding occupation. There's talk about annexation. There is genocide cases being pursued in the international courts. Humanitarian situation is dire, especially in Gaza. There's a new U.S. administration that has its own ideas, and so there are many, many different dynamics. I don't admire your position, to be honest, Omar, but we want to hear your perspective first. Can you please talk to us about especially the situation in Gaza in terms of reconstruction, and then the Prime Minister has talked about connecting the two. What is the Palestinian perspective on being able to actually do reconstruction in Gaza, but also having the West Bank and Gaza connect and join under a state in the context of the two-state solution? So, without further ado, I wanna get your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the people present here. And yes, it's not a difficult question, but at this difficult time, especially while our people are enduring this genocide in the occupied Palestinian territory, mainly in Gaza, West Bank, including Jerusalem, and to come to talk under a title two-state solution, I think there is so many generations, they cannot relink the idea of two-state solution with the idea that there is a prolonged occupation that should be ended. Two-state solution for some countries or some players, something about a process without an end. For us, two-state solution always should be relinked to end the illegal Israeli occupation that was stipulated in the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, dismantling all the illegal settlements in the occupied Palestinian territory. And illegal settlements, that means this apartheid regime that Israel is consolidating in the occupied Palestinian territory, and to evacuate all the settlers out of this land. So this is the right definition of the two-state solution. So two-state solution also, we should link that it's not only for the Palestinian people, actually, but it's also for the region itself. Because what Israel is trying to do now is to inflame all the region, not only in Palestine, but also in neighboring countries. So the difficulties and the genocide and the oppression and aggression is not only against the Palestinian people, but it seems that it's expanded to all the area, and it's expanded not only in Gaza, the genocidal war in Gaza for more than 18 months, killing and maiming. And what we're seeing in Palestine, our people are not only losing their lives, their beloved ones, their hopes, unfortunately. And if we are not going to move and to take concrete actions, and there is a lot of concrete actions that can be taken actually, but we don't know how much there is an appetite from the international community to stop giving us good statements only without taking real actions, because we all know what is really needed to do that. We all speak that there is genocide in Palestine, but unfortunately, there are some countries are still providing Israel with weapons. We're still talking about international law and international community obligations, and no one is holding Israel accountable. We're all talking about two-state solution, and we're seeing Israel with its colonial regime expanded in Palestinian territory. We always trying to find initiatives. We as victims should bring initiatives toward the international community to tell them that we're ready and we want to live in peace and security in the region, while we are the landowner and we are the indigenous people of this land. But unfortunately, we should always come with initiatives, with ideas. And we are feeling actually now that we may be the only, with some few countries for sure and international players, that are supporting the two-state solution. Because what Israel is doing on the ground is destroying not only the hope and the lives of the Palestinian people, but they are destroying this terminology or this idea itself. So what they did in Gaza actually is a systematic and widespread policy of Israel, destroying the future of Palestinian people, destroying the Palestinian land, because the current fascist Israeli government, they came with their program. This program based on 3 pillars, and maybe the Minister of Finance, so-called Minister of Finance, came with that 3 ideas, that the Palestinians can live here if they can be servants to the Israelis. If not, then they can voluntarily go out of Palestine. And now we hear about this so-called, the code name of forcible transfer and displacement, voluntary immigration. Or third, if they are not going to take the first or second option, the Israeli occupying army will deal with those terrorists to kill them. So you have mainly choices between to be killed or to be displaced. At the same time, Netanyahu himself came with his idea that he came to suppress any aspiration of the Palestinian people to statehood. So what we're seeing now for 18 months is a policy. So as you said, that we have plans. One of these plans is reconstruction plan for Gaza. And this reconstruction plan for Gaza is not a technical plan, by the way. It's a plan with 4 pillars, one of them technical, how to rebuild Gaza. But there is 3 other pillars, for sure, after the ceasefire. We have the governance, we have security, and we have the political track. So if there is a ceasefire and Israel is not willing, as we saw, and our brothers in Egypt and Qatar, with the help of the Americans, are trying to reach to a deal, but Israel, they don't want to reach to any kind of deal on ceasefire. And without ceasefire, reconstruction will be not difficult, impossible. So we have a plan to reconstruct Gaza while our people in their homelands, because we don't want our people to leave Palestine. And in that plan, there is a recovery, there is a reconstruction. As I said, phases. It's very clear. There is an implementation plan for this reconstruction plan that was adopted by the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, including so many countries from the international community came and adopted that plan. The governance, security, and political track. Political track, because without a political horizon, it will be difficult for countries to come and to invest and to rebuild Gaza to be destroyed by Israel once again. So there is some guarantees should be there on the table. We cannot start a reconstruction plan to be once again. Gaza, for the last 20 years, more than 5 wars. I don't like to use the word wars, but for someone it's easy to understand. 5 aggressions on Gaza or more. And intentionally, Israel is targeting civilians and women and children. So we have a construction plan. That plan was adopted by the Arab League, by the OIC, by EU, by many other countries. And we're ready to discuss so many, but there is obligation on the international community to stop this aggression on the Palestinian people. We need that actionable issue. We fed up with good statements. Good statements are good, but those should be linked directly to actions, including the accountability.
Yeah. Omar, you're right. There's been no shortage of plans willingness on the part of the many countries around the world to help and make it a reality, two-state solution. But of course, the elephant in the room is Washington. I'm based in Washington, so I come from a town where there's absolutely no willingness to recognize the realities you're talking about. On the contrary, actually enables Israel. Do you see, based on just last week's meeting between Netanyahu and President Trump, what is your perspective on what Trump might do as opposed to what Biden did? Do you think there will be any changes, or that kind of the only power that could truly push Israel to do anything serious and end the occupation perhaps is the United States, which is very unwilling to do that? What is your perspective on that? But you have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you so much. I think it's very clear for us and for all of us. The only one that came with the truce or the ceasefire is Trump when he came in power in the U.S., and he made it for the first time. Actually, we've been in that more than 15 months with nothing when it was the Biden administration. But as I said first, we as Arab Islamic international community that believes in international law and the rights of the Palestinian people and all of this multilateral system should have a unified position toward what is really need to be done for this question. Once there is a consolidated position, then we can bring that position to the U.S. administration or any other players all over the world to tell them that this is the only way, this is the only path toward justice, stability, security in the region. So the American administration, they can do that if they want, if they are ready to engage. We have so many engagement in the upcoming months. We have the visit of Mr. Trump to Saudi Arabia and the region. We have the Global Alliance for the implementation of the two-state solution. We have the peace conference that might come up in June for the implementation of the two-state solution. There is opportunities. We need to use these opportunities to resolve this.
Thank you. Minister Kag, I want to turn to you. You have obviously two different hats, one about reconstruction, but also the peace process. Like Omar was talking about it, Middle East peace process has been just a process with no end. The goal has been very elusive. I don't expect you to really reflect on the politics of it as much as Omar did, but what are your priorities these days in terms of, is it the reconstruction, trying to find the funding for it, trying to get things going on the ground? What are the challenges the UN is facing right now in terms of both reconstruction but also the so-called Middle East process that's not going anywhere politically, it seems?
No, thank you very much. Actually, I will start with the process and not replicating what Omar says. We have different roles. But I'd like to make 5 points, because in that context you can look at Gaza. See, the two-state solution is sometimes touted as either written off by reality or as something that requires a novel approach. Mm-hmm. My statement would be, let's try something new. Let's actually try to implement it. Let's secure implementation of clear parameters that are legitimate, internationally accepted, and so far have not come to fruition. That is good for the safety and security of Israel, short to long term, and the Palestinians are entitled as the longest stateless people to an independent, viable state. Now the reality coming to Gaza is that Gaza is between destruction, despair, and utter trauma. The ability to make a life or to continue living in Gaza is in peril. But West Bank is at risk of suffering a Gazification if we're looking at the settlements, the accelerated expansion of settlements, housing demolitions, the sheer confinement of the civilian population. So some journalists call it the Gazification of West Bank, and we need to mark that, because for some of the extremist voices in Israel, it's all about the West Bank. That is the biblical territory. The same applies to East Jerusalem. So you don't have to annex West Bank in order to secure a creeping annexation in all but name, and that's extremely important. because it prevents and impedes the realization of statehood. You just raise the bar for the negotiations. You know, what's needed, if the member states are clear, and if they can move beyond the rhetoric of all claiming and, you know, professing sort of almost like a religious vow, we are committed to the two-state solution, they have to own it, they have to exercise sovereignty, they have to be willing to apply serious pressure on both parties, because the PA doesn't come scot-free here. They have their homework to do as well, but both parties. But there is an occupation, so there's an asymmetric power relationship, and we have to understand that and we have to recognize that. The asymmetry is very self-evident. Now, I go back to, perhaps only Omar knows this artwork by Slimane Mansour, a very famous Palestinian artist. 1996, it's a sculpture, and it's called Palestine Disappearing. And that's been happening over the course. But you can reverse it with political will by member states, and that requires courage. Courage to choose, courage to use the instruments, and go beyond the conferences. And it may sound contradictory coming from a now UN envoy. We need to see changes on the ground in livelihoods, in housing, enabling the Palestinians to stay. That also means being very vocal and clear on forced displacement or the risk of forced displacement, by another name, so-called voluntary migration. Because the destruction of Gaza may indeed lead people to think there is no life. Palestinians are highly educated. They want the best for their children. Which parent with young children can think of a future where you live in a tent, you have no water, no access to medical treatment, and no education? This is the killer of personal growth and individual emancipation. But a peace deal cannot be transactional. We've seen that. All other efforts, they are partial, they're transactional, they're based on limited exchanges. It will neither bring peace and security, so we have an historic opportunity, but to my mind, it is disappearing as much as Slimane Mansour's piece of artwork is still there. The reality is disappearing, and it may become unnegotiable. And this damages not only the chances of statehood, as well as safety and security for Israel, because the Palestinians will not go anywhere. To be safe, secure, Jewish and democratic means the Palestinians also need to have a state. You need to look at it from both angles. And last but not least, the international community has suffered a serious blow in not standing up effectively for international humanitarian law and for the norms and standards it likes to hold itself to. It's got to move from words to action, and these are choices member states have to make. More importantly, I think there is an opportunity in the France-Saudi-led conference, but it's got to be real, it's got to be tangible. We do not need more biblical text. I would almost say we do not need more UNE's text, because it doesn't get you statehood. It needs to be real and realistic. And this is the challenge in this room, and everybody who is part of decision making. The Arab states also obviously are doing their bit, but we need much more. We need the US, we need the Israelis in the room, and you can do a bilateral conference, you can have multilateral conferences, but at the end game has to be the same conclusion. Statehood realized. It's been too many decades. It's in no one's interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What I just heard from you is trying to implement a bottom-up approach instead of trying to make a grand bargain, I guess, that, you know, the process has been...
No, actually bottom-up, that's been tried many times. Bottom-up gets you on the wrong road, gets you on the dirt road. We need to get back to the high road. We need to focus on the strategic goal, two states, solution, implemented. The bottom-up, the bottom-up approach is people to people, is investments, is community speaking to communities. All that will be happening, but it is everything but statehood.
Yeah, what I meant is, you know, without determining announcing a deal, but actually implement the two-state solution.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
And benchmark it.
Yes. Well, thank you for those comments. Again, I have many follow-up things in my head about that, the political will and the U.S. leadership, etc. Maybe I'll ask the other panelists, but I want to go through my panel quickly. Philip, you've talked about the weaponization of humanitarian aid by Israel, but we just chatted about the challenges that UNRWA faces. It's been about a year, I think, the U.S. Pulled the funding from UNRWA. You're facing a lot of difficulties on the ground by Israeli security forces basically not allowing you to access people who need your help. And you know, your own staff have been accused of different things by Israel, so they make everything, they do everything to make it impossible for you to operate on the ground, but yet you try. So can you tell us about those challenges and how you're trying to cope with them?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kadi. I think the challenges the agency is going through needs to be read through the discussion we have now. I mean, what is at stake? What is at stake is a solution for the Palestinian. What is at stake is a two-state solution. And what does UNRWA represent in the eyes of the people? I hear many times when I started that, you know, Israel inherited the state in 48, and the Palestinian inherited UNRWA in the absence of a state. Now, clearly, the agency is perceived by the Palestinian as a custody of its identity, the witness of their suffering, and basically we are the custody of their identity. Now, when I started as a Commissioner General, I heard many times from the Israeli establishment that we consider UNRWA as a necessary evil. We disagree with the reason of being of UNRWA, but we will deal with you, we cope with you, because we do not see any alternative to the services the agency is providing to one of the most destitute communities in the region, being the Palestinian refugees. And what are the services? Our services are the one of a government. We are a Ministry of Education, Primary Health, Social Services for the Palestinian refugees across the region living in the camp. When October 7 started, the unnecessary evil became we became an unnecessary evil, and hence the agency became also an objective of this war. Now, it is true we keep hearing about, you know, the main reason is that the agency has been infiltrated by Hamas or by Palestinian faction beyond repair. But we all know that this is not the case. This is not the reason. The real reason behind it is we want to strip the Palestinian from the refugee statute, because if we strip the Palestinian from the refugee statute, there is no refugee. So we are not talking about the right of return. And so we are basically also further undermining the self-determination right of the Palestinian. So we become a political objective. And we hear this by the lawmakers who were behind the Knesset bill banning the presence of UNRWA in East Jerusalem, or banning any contact between Israel and the agency. They said this is one opportunity in a generation to finally get rid of the agency. So now the question is, what will be the future of the agency? And I think the future lies very much on what we heard from both Omar and Sigrid. The future will very much depend on the future political trajectory. I do believe that an agency like ours, under the massive political, security and financial attack we are under, cannot survive outside of a political framework or outside a possible political horizon. And the months to come will basically tell us what will be the future direction of travel. Meanwhile, the agency struggles to keep its services in Gaza in general, it becomes almost impossible but for anyone to operate. What's taking place is just unprecedented. Sigrid described this hell on earth. We keep hearing more and more people saying or praying, hoping that they can be killed with their family because they don't want to experience additional days of the hell they are going under. So hence, obviously, the need of a ceasefire. Talking about political will, I would like also to flag that collectively, during the ceasefire, we have brought in Gaza more assistance than we have been able over the last 15, 16 months, which shows that when hindrances and obstacles are lifted, we can properly respond to needs, whatever the needs are. Now, and I used indeed the word weaponization, but if you decide to stop any supply to a needy population in order to put pressure on the same population, this is nothing else than weaponizing humanitarian assistance, which we all know is contrary to any, expected line of IHL. Maybe my last comment on this, I think beyond Gaza, beyond UNRWA, beyond the two-state solution, much more is at stake. What we have seen over the last year is the erosion of the international rule-based order, the erosion of IHL. Omar talked a lot about the outrage the international community keep expressing, but nothing has gone beyond outrage. We have banalized the outrage, and through this banalization, we make the unacceptable even, we try to make the unacceptable even more unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip, for underlining the fact that, the international law, international institutions are directly under attack, and they are being rendered less and less effective to make things happen on the ground. As simple as, growing up, I'm not that old, but growing up, humanitarian aid was not politicized like this. It was not, when UN sent missions around the world, all countries communicated, cooperated regardless of their political disagreements. So we are in a very sad state of affairs regarding these kind of international institutions, although the facts on the ground get relayed to the international audiences much faster, and the public opinion is changing very, very rapidly fast around the world, and we see countries being involved from faraway lands in different capacities with different perspectives. So that's my segue to South Africa. Faisal, South Africa has lodged that complaint in the international courts about genocide charge against Israel. Turkey joined that effort among other countries. How do you see it? You're someone who's been involved in, you've followed wars around the world. What is your perspective on the question of Palestine and the two-state solution as a South African? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Good afternoon. First of all, I'm speaking as a South African citizen, as an individual, not part of government, so I'm not expressing any view that is official. With the historical background of the South African struggle, we have to look at where the Palestinian struggle has come from. In my mind, peace talks are tools for managing the occupation, not ending the occupation. I think we need to bear that in mind. For 80 years, we've probably seen the longest peace talk or peace talks in progress. And the one thing that the peace talks guarantee above everything else is the security for Israel. And the concerns and freedom for Palestinians is a byproduct of Israel's security. So that essentially is the problem that we have. I want to make 4 points when we talk about peace talks and the two-state solution. Number one, there is no more land left for a state, for a Palestinian state. That is the reality. What we've witnessed in the last 18 months is the total destruction of Palestinian land. Now, you can have fanciful real estate plans to rebuild Gaza, but that's a delusion. It's a two-state delusion. Number two, the occupier, the Israelis, the Netanyahu government, has no interest in sharing the occupied lands. They've made it clear from 9th October, what we are engaging is a total elimination of Palestinians. As one of the ministers said, there are no innocents in Gaza. Why should you not interpret that the way that he wants you to interpret it? Why do you have to use language to couch that in other terms? It is ethnic cleansing. That's point number two. Point number three, a two-state framework ignores the reality of apartheid. If it looks like apartheid, if it talks like apartheid, if it walks like apartheid, it is apartheid. We are able to see it. As South Africans, our links to the Palestinian people is not from 29 December 2023 in our application to the ICJ. No. It goes beyond that. It is tugging at the deep humanity of the people who witnessed apartheid, who witnessed racism, who witnessed discrimination. We know what it is. So when you talk about a two-state framework, how can you not talk about the consequences of genocide and apartheid? The realities on the ground have shifted, are shifting every day. It is troublesome to speak about a peace treaty when not probably 2.5 hours away from here, there's an ongoing genocide that's taking place. Every day the realities on the ground are changing. How do you build a viable, sustainable state on that? You can't. My fourth point, the genocide has shattered the pretense of international law. It has destroyed the myth of Western unbiasedness. It has put in the spotlight that we have to find alternatives. And speaking from someone from the global south, let me give you the experience that we had in our liberation struggle. Western countries were not friends of the liberation movement and black South Africans. Western governments actively subverted the boycott movement and sanctions in South Africa. It was the global south, the frontline states, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Botswana, Namibia, all of them were the states that confronted apartheid and its reality. The Bandung Conference, the Commonwealth heads of state, all of these, the non-aligned movement, all of them provided and encouraged the liberation of South Africa. But there was a strategy, there was a process. At the moment, when it comes to Palestine, I'm sorry, there is no strategy. There is no strategy for peace, there is no strategy towards embracing the liberation of the Palestinian people. Let me end just with this point here. We've been through 18 months or more of the most vicious genocidal attack on a people. There is only one goal, and the goal is to eradicate Palestinians from the land. If you cannot recognize that, if you cannot even use the word genocide, if you are forbidden to use the word genocide, in Western lexicon, in Western states, in Western countries, we are now being told not to use those words. Then how do you progress down the route to conceptualize peace and justice for Palestinians? It is a non-starter if you still believe that what you have and what you can build on is a two states. I might be quite harsh in that, but ultimately, Palestinians have the right to determine what they want. And at the same time, the Israelis in Netanyahu's government has made it clear to the world they don't want a Palestinian state. We have to find reasonable alternatives. If not, we have the blood of 2 million Palestinians on our hands. That's what it is. And in 80 years' time, when you come back to have a debate on whether it's Oslo or Paris or Arab Initiative, you would have betrayed the Palestinian cause in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you, Faisal. Thank you, Faisal, for that, harsh reality check, which has obvious resonance in this room, but beyond this room as well. And the international community, as you rightly pointed out, either, is duplicitous or ineffective, among other things, but the governments especially are struggling to get out of that framework, as you pointed out. And I want to turn to Arab League, which is composed of member states. I want to get their perspective on how they see this. Secretary General, there was a very quick meeting after October 7, a meeting where Arab League and OIC joined together. Turkey was also very active in that meeting. Ever since we've seen many different countries having different policies, obviously there is a general agreement on many of the Palestinian demands and the statehood and all that, but what are some of the priorities the League has that they would like implemented right now, given the discussions we've had? I don't want to summarize again, but the situation on the ground is very dire. Political will is not there. American support is continuing for Israel, etc. So please, we would like your perspective.
Thank you very much. I have to apologize for being late. Actually, I was attending another meeting for the Islamic Arab group, trying to find a way out. But in your earlier intervention, you said that you are not old enough I respond by telling you I am old enough to recount to all of you the story of Palestine, if I may, because it would eliminate what we are witnessing right now. On the 29th of November 1947, 2 years of the United Nations, the General Assembly of the United Nations embraced, adopted Resolution 181, dividing Palestine between the Jews and the Palestinians, giving them roughly each 50% of the territory of Palestine. The Palestinians were not enthusiastic because they wanted a unified land of Palestine. The Israelis, a year after, declared the birth of their own state, Israel, on the 15th of May, 1948. And a number of successive wars pursued. But it was obvious from the very beginning, and it is not only related to the Israelis of today or the Palestinians of today, that then the Israelis didn't want a Palestinian partner in Palestine at the time. Anyhow, I want to say the following. At the time, 47, I was only 5 years old. And I followed a few years after what was happening. What was happening is as follows. In Camp David Accords in September 78, the Israelis, the Egyptians, the Americans agreed on a process whereby self-rule, then a Palestinian state would evolve over 5 years period. That is 78. In 91, there was another conference, the Madrid Conference, launching a process of Madrid, followed by the process of Oslo. All that period, Israel was expanding in the occupied territories to the point that currently today, Israel is 78% of historical Palestine of 47. 78% of the territory belongs to Israel as Israel proper. Only remains to the Palestinians 22%. And as my colleague from South Africa, even the 22% are being eaten away from the Palestinians. So from the very beginning, the concept was two states. It isn't a new concept. It is not imagined or figured by a group of strategists on the Palestinian side. It has been there all along. And because of this, I even ask myself, is the question proper that it is time for a Palestinian state? The Palestinian state was imagined 80 years earlier. Anyhow, there has been negotiations that lasted for now since Camp David, since Oslo, since Madrid, almost 45 years. Almost 45 years. I was a member of the Egyptian delegation in Madrid, 91. And I recall a meeting with the Prime Minister, Foreign Minister of Israel, Menachem Shamir, Ishaq Shamir. And he said, well, and he was addressing the Egyptian delegation, I will negotiate for 10 years with the Palestinians. That was 91. And I will negotiate with them for 10 years, and they will take nothing out of me. That was the Israeli right. Over the years, the right in Israel expanded in the way we see it now. The sad thing is what Faisal spoke about, the double standards. Those who have been talking about their values, our values, your values would not allow injustice to happen. And your values would not allow the killing to continue, the eradication of the Palestinian people to continue. What I mean by that is, it is a ploy. And the greed is, we take over all of Palestine. Okay, let's assume that they will take all over Palestine. What would you do with the Palestinian population? You have 7.5 million Palestinians and 7.5 million Israelis in the historical lands of Palestine. What would you do with 1/2 of the population? Well, we can kill them, or we will show mercy. We will deport them out of their lands. We will deport them out of their land. And from the very beginning, there has been the concept of separate the land from the people. The people can live in Australia, but the land is ours. And that is the wrong approach, sadly allowed by those who have been talking about their values. This is the story of Palestine. Unless we all bring pressure on the Israelis, as well as pressures on the Western world to act, we will be witnessing, sadly, a repeat of the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Special Envoy, I want to get your perspective, how China looks at the Middle East peace process. We've obviously had many decades of this discouraging picture in the Middle East, and China in many ways is a newcomer. What is your perspective? Especially, if you can address it both in the context of sort of power struggle with the United States globally, but that happening also in this region, because United States is a major patron of Israel on one side.
谢谢。我会用中文讲，希望你们能。If you understand Chinese, it's good. If you don't understand, you use this. 这个，我想，两国方案现在已经是国际社会的一个共识了。这个，但是现在两国方案，的前景受到了很大的侵蚀，很大的伤害。那么，在当前的形势下，这个我们应该怎么做？中方态度很明确，就是国际社会应该进一步的凝聚共识，形成合力，在4个方面、4个方向，做出努力。 第一个呢，就是还是要这个当务之急，就是停火止战，迅速的结束现在加沙面临的危机。应该认识到特别是施暴者应该认识到，武力换不来和平，武力是换不来和平，也换不来安全。所以中国支持有关各方这个实现停火的努力，避免局势进一步的恶化，这是第一点没有停火止战这个前提下边的步骤都是这个无从谈起。第二点就是在停火止战之后加沙的治理问题，中国的这个态度是还是要坚持8人制8的原则。巴勒斯坦的加沙地区是巴勒斯坦的领土它不应该成为政治交易的筹码。加沙今后的安排必须尊重巴勒斯坦人民的意愿。任何强制改变加沙地位的行径，我们认为都不会带来和平只会造成新的动荡。所以加沙的治理必须是以8人制8为原则，加沙应该永远是巴勒斯坦的领土。现在有一些说法迁移巴勒斯坦人所有这些说法都是在掏空两国方案的基础最终也是行不通的。所以我们支持阿拉伯国家伊斯兰国家在紧急部长会上核可的加沙的重建计划。我们也欢迎埃及本月举办巴勒斯坦加沙重建部长级的会议，这是第二点，就是加沙的重建问题。第三点呢，就是这个我们要推动巴勒斯坦的内部和解。要想实现两国方案有一些必要的条件，其中一个条件就是要实现巴勒斯坦内部的民族和解。如果巴勒斯坦人不用一个声音讲话，如果巴勒斯坦人没有一个统一的纲领治国的纲领，那就两国方案实现两国方案基础也不存在。正是因为如此，所以中国在这方面做出努力这个去年曾经邀请14个巴勒斯坦组织到中国去这个在一定程度上实现巴勒斯坦民族和解，也是为两国方案奠定某种政治基础这是第三点。我觉得在这个方面很多国家做出的努力，像埃及阿尔及利亚俄罗斯在这之前都阿拉伯国家伊斯兰国家做出了一系列努力，中国的努力是这一系列努力的一部分。我们今后还要继续努力。我们认为这是落实两国方案一个实际步骤。第四点就是要想实现两国方案，落实两国方案，我们要这个呼吁更多的国家，国际社会更多的国家来承认巴勒斯坦国。这个我们也认为联合国应该接受巴勒斯坦作为正式成员加入联合国这也是实现落实两国方案的一个重要的条件。我们欢迎法国和沙特今年6月召开和平解决巴勒斯坦问题和落实两国方案的高级别会议我们认为这也是落实两国方案的一次有益的尝试。我们也呼吁国际社会更多的国家承认巴勒斯坦。 现在这个联合国大会在这方面已经有决议了，我们希望这个决议能够得到执行，特别是在安理会能够得到执行。这样的话，为两国方案落实两国方案这个奠定另一个重要的基础。这也是我们中国作为联合国安理会常任理事国这个做出努力的一部分。总之，我们认为当前巴勒斯坦的加沙地区的形势非常严峻根本解决问题的根本出路还是两国方案落实两国方案。既然两国方案在国际上有了最大的共识它是国际社会的最大的公约数大部分国家都能够接受。我们希望这个两国方案能够这个落实两国方案能够有它的路线图，有它的时间表我们共同为此来做出我们的努力。谢谢。
Thank you for those comments. I wanted to have questions from the audience, but unfortunately we've run out of our time. I want to thank my panelists. This is obviously this has been a great session. We've got some international perspectives as well as perspectives from the ground. Thank you so much for joining us and listening to this panel.